Welcome to Strong Legends, daily sci-fi stories that fuel your mind. Subscribe and join the legend.
A hush fell over the sterile docking bay as the cargo airlock hissed open, revealing the battered Starship Endeavor's grace. Its hull bore the faint scars of meteor strikes and radiation pocks, silent testaments to a journey that had spanned light years of space. Docking clamps retracted with a metallic click, and the overhead lamps flickered once, twice, then settled into a steady glow. Captain Marek Mirek stood at the threshold, arms folded across his chest, his uniform crisp but his expression weary. Behind him, a half-dozen coalition officers waited, datapads in hand. None of them knew quite what to expect. From within the hold, a single figure emerged, a small child, no taller than a human knee. Her skin was a soft lavender, like dawn light filtered through alien clouds. Silver veins marbled her cheeks, and her hair, if it could be called that, floated around her head in thin bioluminescent filaments. But it was her eyes that captivated every observer, two shimmering pools of mercury reflecting the starfield beyond the bay's translucent wall. She paused under the glare of the lamps, shoulders trembling. In her hands, she clutched a battered satchel, straps worn smooth by countless too many hands that had returned her. She wore a simple shift of white fabric that in better times might have been embroidered with homeward symbols. Now it hung loose and unadorned. A coalition adjutant stepped forward, voice precise. Subject designation Illyra of the unnamed sector. Age, approximately 6 standard cycles. Prior placements, 6. All returns duly logged. She tapped her datapad, sending the dossier's summary to the chamber's central display. Illyra's breath caught. 6 placements. Already more than half a dozen worlds had deemed her unwanted. 6 different doors had closed in her face before she could even settle inside. Captain Mirek cleared his throat. "Thank you, Lieutenant, if you'll step back." He held out a hand, not to push back the official, but to signal that this was now his concern. The adjutant complied, retreating beside her colleagues. Mirek knelt, folding himself into a more approachable form. "Hello," he said softly. "I'm Captain Marek Mirek." His voice carried the calm cadence of someone accustomed to command, yet imbued with gentleness. "Can you tell me your name?" For a moment, the girl said nothing. The sudden spotlight, skin untrained for attention, made her eyes widen. Slowly, she lowered the satchel, lips parting in a whisper. Illyra. Illyra, Mirek. Repeated, tasting the name's soft consonants. He reached into his pocket and produced a small handheld translator, standard issue for first contacts. He toggled it on. "Welcome to the Andresian Adoption Coalition, Illyra. We know this has been difficult." He paused, choosing each word as though it mattered more than any tactical command. "We're here to help you find a place to call home." Behind him, the holographic display flickered through images of potential foster worlds. Icy tundras, desert plains, spired cityscapes of chrome and glass. With each world's name, Illyra's hopeful expression dimmed. She'd seen these before. Her last placement had been on Sovran 9, where her telepathic pulses had triggered nightmares in the local psyker commune. They'd sent her away within a fortnight. Mirek sensed her gaze fixed on the holograms. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The girl flinched at first. The touch was unfamiliar, a foreign language of compassion, but then she relaxed, as though recognizing in him a soul wearied by its own share of rejections. The Coalition. Director, an austere Galian named Tavasha, approached. "Captain Mirek, the dossier is thorough. Illyra's telepathic abilities are unorthodox. Many worlds see them as a liability. She's—" Tavasha hesitated, searching for a diplomatic phrase. "Unpredictable," the adjutant finished. Illyra's eyes darted between Tavasha's stern mandibles and the glowing ceiling panels. Her throat bobbed as tears gathered. Captain Mirek tightened his grip on her shoulder, protecting her from the clinical judgment that buzzed around the room. "I know what it's like," he said gently, "to be sent away because you don't fit someone's idea of normal. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small folded photograph, a relic from his youth. In it, a scrawny boy in patched overalls stood clutching a battered toy mech, eyes full of hope. "I was once an orphan," Mirek continued, voice barely above a whisper. "From the undercity of Earth's new Azrael. I understand what returning feels like." The room fell silent. Even Tavasha's compound eyes reflected a spark of something that might have been empathy. The girl, for her part, blinked at Mio frequency, signals worming gently through her mind, vague feelings of safety, of acceptance. "Very well," Tavasha finally said, clearing her throat. "We'll proceed with the next stage, temporary assignment to the Endeavor's grace quarters. Captain, you've volunteered to oversee her transition." Her mandibles clicked into what passed for a smile. "I trust you'll report any complications directly to us." Mirek nodded. "Thank you, Director. You have my word." As the Coalition officers stamped the final transfer orders, Illyra allowed herself a small exhalation. The transport doors slid open, revealing a narrow corridor lined with soft muted lighting. Behind them, the docking bay bustled with interstellar traffic, trading freighters, passenger cruisers, and other orphaned souls seeking refuge. But here, in this moment, it felt as though the galaxy had narrowed down to the two of them. Mirek held out his hand. "Shall we?" His gesture was simple, but it carried an unspoken plea. "Will you trust me?" Illyra looked at the outstretched fingers that bore no scanners, no restraints, only the promise of a guiding hand. She took it, and for the first time in many cycles, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. The corridor lights stretched before them like stars in flight, leading toward a future she dared not yet name home, but might, with time, come to claim. The wind on Zartheus IV felt like razor blades against Illyra's lavender skin. Each gust carried shards of ice crystal that stung her cheeks and left streaks of frost along her bioluminescent filaments. She had arrived hopeful, told that her ability to sense shifting weather patterns might save crops in the frigid valleys. But within 3 cycles her presence had unnerved the locals. Their lungs burned at her warmth. Their thin-blooded physiology could not tolerate the gentle heat radiating from her skin. She packed her satchel again, each fold of fabric a memory fraying at the edges. On the transport shuttle back to orbit, she watched the planet grow small through the porthole. Zartheus's cobalt seas shimmered beneath swirling storm clouds, and Illyra pressed her forehead against the cold glass, leaving a violet fingerprint. She wondered, was she a storm of her own making? Her next placement on the desert moons of Kaltor promised a fresh start. There, subterranean farm domes bloomed under artificial suns, and Illyra's telepathy was supposed to help stabilize the colonists' mental rhythms during the long night cycles. But her first impulse sent ripples through their psychic shields, a burst of silent laughter, born of relief at finally having a home. The colonists panicked, certain she was harvesting emotions for a hidden agenda. Guards in armored suits escorted her back, apologizing as they clamped restraints around her wrists, muttering about dangerous unknowns. Terra Nova Prime was different in name only, sprawling megacities, towering biodomes, and humans who prided themselves on tolerance. Illyra watched as wide-eyed children approached, drawn by the odd beauty of her filaments. She extended tentative greetings, weaving warmth and curiosity into their minds. But the corporate sponsors worried about liability. What if her telepathy breached data security? They filed their complaints in airtight memos, potential risk to neural encryption protocols, and she was sent back again with sterile condolences and a voucher for a single hyperspace jump. Sovert 9, the triple moon world of psychics, should have been a refuge. Here, telepaths were the ruling class, their thoughts entwined in communal harmony. Yet Illyra's nascent power was raw and unfiltered. One evening, as she sat alone beneath the pale glow of the largest moon, she sent out a gentle probe, reaching for companionship. Instead, she touched upon the Council's darkest fears, echoes of hidden doubts, unspoken regrets, and the suppressed guilt of centuries of manipulation. The Council recoiled, branding her a mental contaminant whose untrained mind could fracture their collective consciousness. She was returned once more, escorted off-world by silent drones. Each rejection left fresh scars, not on her body, but in her mind. Illyra felt as though she carried a growing weight in her chest, a gravity that pulled her thoughts inward. In quiet moments, she traced imaginary patterns across her satchel's worn leather, counting the tally marks scratched into the metal clasp. 7 returns now, and each one a silent indictment of her worth. Back aboard the shuttle destined for the Andrasian Adoption Coalition's main registry station, she sat huddled in a corner of the cargo bay. The hum of the engines was too loud, drowning out her whispers of comfort. A single strap of her satchel had frayed, and she touched it with delicate fingers as if hoping to stitch herself back together. Flashbacks drifted through her mind like specters. The crystal spires of her lost natal world, shards of translucent light stretching toward a rose-tinted sky, the lullabies her mother hummed, voices interlaced in harmonies beyond human scales, faces she couldn't fully remember, yet felt achingly familiar, siblings who had trekked across starlit plains with her, friends whose laughter had rung like bells in the salty air. But those memories had slipped away when she was sold into the orphan caravans of the rim space markets piece by piece until only sorrow remained. A knock at the cargo bay hatch jolted her back to the present. The door slid open to reveal a bridge steward, his uniform spotless, aura shield gleaming. "Subject Illyra," he intoned. "Destination, Andrasian Adoption Coalition. We have your manifest." Illyra rose with the effort of a creature awakening from a long, troubled sleep. She secured her satchel and followed him down the narrow aisle. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the corridor itself were pulling her back, urging her to return to the safety of inertia. At the registry station, the air was saturated with the scent of ozone and recycled laughter. Holographic banners floated above, advertising, "Find your forever family today," and "Hope beyond the stars." Illyra's heart twisted. Hope? It had betrayed her 6 times already. But this time, something was different. A flicker of kindness in the steward's eyes as he guided her toward a waiting row of officers. She clutched her satchel, its worn surfaces a testament to her journey, and swallowed the lump in her throat. The lead clerk peered up from their console, mandibles clicking in greeting. "Another arrival," they said, voice echoing through the hall. "Subject reclassified as high priority due to age and repeated returns." Illyra's stomach dropped. High priority meant special scrutiny, more interviews, and a longer wait. The clerk's gaze softened for a moment, as though they too had felt the weight of her travels. But the moment passed. "Please proceed to processing Unit 5. The clerk directed, waving her onward. She moved forward, each footfall measured. Behind her, the corridor stretched into the unknown, flickering lights and the hum of distant machinery. In front, a door slid open to reveal a small room bathed in pale green light. An empty chair waited. Summoning the last reserves of her courage, Illyra stepped inside. The door whooshed shut behind her. The walls closed in, screens activated, and questions began to flow. Name, age, abilities. With each query, she performed the same dance of words and gestures she'd perfected over 6 placements. She answered in measured tones, her translator capturing every nuance. But inside, her chest constricted. Would this chapter end like the rest? Far beyond the processing room, on the observation corridor, Captain Marek Mirek reviewed Illyra's file again. He tapped a data readout. 7 rejections logged. The girl's physiological markers stable, but her mental state flagged for extreme distress. He straightened. Somewhere inside that clinic, Illyra sat alone, an orphan reborn every time. She was sent away. The slightest tremor passed through his chest, the familiar ache of duty entwined with compassion. He pressed a command. "Prepare transport to Endeavor's Grace Quarters," he ordered, and set aside the next available hydroponic slot. Behind him, the station's orchestration continued, but something had shifted. The weight of her returns had grown too heavy for any single registry to bear. And for Captain Mirek, That was enough reason to try something different. The corridors of the Andresian Adoption Coalition stations were engineered to be efficient. Sleek walls of gleaming polymer panels, the soft hum of life support ducts echoing in every passage. But efficiency bred anonymity, and anonymity deepened Alira's isolation. Each day she moved from one sterile chamber to another, answering queries under harsh fluorescent lights, her translator crackling with the same 5 words offered in successive permutations. I want a place to stay. Captain Marek Mirek had watched her file grow colder on his console, a dossier that chronicled the shivers of rejection in her bioluminescent filaments, the tightening of her chest at every not approved stamp. He remembered the restless nights in the Undercity, dreaming of someone, anyone who would say yes. He could not unmake the past, but he could try to shape her future. That afternoon, Mirek slipped away from the bridge under the pretense of routine inspections. He navigated the labyrinthine maintenance tunnels that ran like veins beneath the station. The air here was stale, tinged with coolant and the distant hiss of hydraulics. He paused at a service hatch labeled Cargo Bay Delta, decrypted its security code with a flick of his wrist implant, and descended a narrow ladder into the hold where Elira sat alone. She was hunched against a stack of supply crates, her silver filament hair looping around her shoulders. Her translator lay forgotten at her feet, its lights dimmed. In the tenuous gravity, she looked smaller, more fragile than any child he'd ever met. "Might you be Elira?" he ventured, voice soft in the cavernous space. She started, pressing her palms flat against the crate as though to steady herself. Her silver eyes shone with cautious curiosity. Yes? "I'm Captain Marek Mirek," he said, offering the photograph again, the one of himself as a scrawny orphan clutching a battered toy mech. "I used to live alone, too." Her brow furrowed, and for the first time he thought she might speak in her own tongue. Instead, she pointed at the translator, then at him. "Your words?" He tapped the device. It powered on with a soft chirp. "I can share mine directly if you trust me." He paused, waiting. When her lips quivered but did not close completely, he sighed and added, "Or through this." She retrieved the translator cautiously, brushing a strand of bioluminescent hair aside. "Why, you?" she asked, voice a fragile melody. Mirek crouched beside her. "I see something they don't. I see you." She blinked, the swirling lights in her eyes steadying. "They don't?" "Most see the unknown as danger," he said. "But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that worth can't be measured by familiar patterns." He reached into his jacket and produced a small data pad. On its screen glowed an empty adoption petition, formatted for a guardian's signature. "I want to help you. Will you come with me?" Elira's chest heaved, as though she were trying to expel years of fear in a single breath. Her fingers lingered on the data pad, tracing the outline of the signature box. She closed her eyes, memories rippling across her mind. Frost-bitten, plains of Zartheus, the glare of desert moons, the cold corridors of Sovran Nime. Rejection had become her refrain, an echo in every planet's courtyard. But here, in the hush of the cargo hold, another sound whispered through her thoughts. A heartbeat of compassion. She opened her eyes, the luminescent filaments around her, face pulsing softly. She tapped the first box, Guardian Name, and with a hesitant flourish wrote out, Marek Mirek. He took the stylus and inked his name beneath hers. The datapad clicked, sealed with an unbreakable encryption key that bound both their destinies. "Welcome aboard, my family," he said, voice thick with relief. She leaned into his side, allowing herself a small smile that illuminated the dark. Hold. It was fragile, tentative, a single bloom of hope in barren circuitry. She whispered a word in her tongue, and through the translator, he heard its meaning for the first time. Home. Behind them, the station's PA system crackled to life, announcing routine docking clearances. But in that moment, the hum of hyperspace rendered the world silent. A human and an alien girl, united not by protocol or savings vouchers, but by a simple truth. Everyone deserved a chance to belong. Captain Mirek rose and offered Alira his hand. Together, they ascended the ladder back into the lighted corridors. And as they stepped into the open bay, the sterile walls seemed to soften around them. For the first time, Alira did not feel like cargo awaiting dispatch. She felt like a daughter ready to journey forward. The hydroponics bay of the Endeavor's Grace was Captain Mirek's favorite refuge, rows of bioluminescent orchids, floating ferns, and gravity-neutral planters that bobbed in soft currents. When Alira first stepped inside, her silver filaments quivered with wonder. Here at last was a place where her warmth and telepathy weren't liabilities but gifts. Mirek knelt beside a cluster of violet-tinged blooms. These orchids respond to emotion, he explained. They glow brighter when they sense calm or happiness. Alira stretched out a tentative hand. Her palm brushed against the smooth pod of a bud, and it pulsed from pale lavender to brilliant amethyst. Her lips curved in astonishment. "I help?" "You do," he said. "Actually, you do more than that." He tapped a control panel, adjusting nutrient flows so the orchids would flourish overnight. "I think these beauties missed you." Over the next weeks, a new rhythm took hold aboard the ship. Each morning, Alira accompanied Mirek on his rounds, inspecting life support siphons, greeting the bustling engineering crew, and sampling the station's synthesizer fresh pastries in the mess hall. The humans, and a handful of other species, had grown curious when they first saw her. Some kept a respectful distance, while others edged closer, eager to befriend the alien child who painted the hydroponics bay in new colors. In the afternoons, Mirek taught her basic calculations on a holo tablet, star chart coordinates, simple physics, even how to pilot a small cargo drone. Alira absorbed it all with bright concentration, her fingertips tracing equations in the air before the tablet materialized the symbols she needed to learn. When she made mistakes, misplacing a decimal or flipping a sign, Mirek merely smiled and said, "A mistake is just the universe teaching us something new." At night, the pair retreated to his cabin. The walls were lined with terrestrial books, ancient myths, bedtime stories, and illustrated field guides to exotic plants. Mirek read aloud tales of forest spirits and starlit voyages, his voice a steady current that carried Alira into dreams more soothing than any she'd known before. Sometimes she returned the favor, singing fragments of her mother's lullabies, their melodic pulses rippling through the cabin's neural mesh and settling like a gentle tide in Mirek's mind. One evening, an emergency light flashed in the corridor. A micrometeor had breached a secondary hull panel. As alarms echoed, Alira's eyes flashed silver blue. She raced to the hydroponics bay ahead of the crew, instinctively searching for structural stresses. Her telepathy, once feared, became a beacon. She sensed the bay's hydraulic lines shifting under the new strain. Guided by her silent signal, the engineering team traced the leak and sealed it before any of the delicate orchids were harmed. When the hum of normal operations resumed, the crew applauded, and for the first time, Alira felt the warmth of respect rather than apprehension. That night, as she and Mirek stood before the bay's glowing plants, he squeezed her hand. "You saved them," he said. "You saved all of us." She pressed her cheek against his arm. "Home," she whispered. As weeks turned into months, Alira's quarters transformed from a Spartan cabin into a vibrant sanctuary. She painted murals of her lost home world, crystal spires beneath rose-tinted skies along the bulkhead panels. In one corner, she nestled a small TerraGlass terrarium with native soil samples she'd salvaged from the Coalition labs, iridescent ferns that unfurled under her gentle guidance, adding a wisp of her childhood to the ship. Mirek watched these changes with quiet pride. When the Coalition reviewed her progress, their reports shifted from high-risk unknown to remarkably adaptive. Alira's laughter echoed through the corridors. Her telepathic weave, once a jarring distortion, had become a stabilizing presence. Crew members reported sleeping more soundly, their nightmares soothed by her calming influence. On the anniversary of her arrival, Captain Mirek invited the entire crew to the hydroponics bay. The orchids were at their fullest, the soft glow bathing everyone in lavender light. Mirek stood with Illyra at his side and addressed the assembled officers and engineers. "Today marks 1 year since we first met Illyra," he began. "In that time, she's taught us more about compassion, courage, and home than any protocol ever could." As applause rippled through the crowd, Illyra stepped forward. She closed her eyes and sent a gentle wave of gratitude through the bay. "And us?" Embrace of shared hearts. The orchids pulsed brighter in response, a living testament to the bond they'd forged. And in that moment, amid the soft pulse of bioluminescence, the captain and his alien daughter knew they had accomplished something extraordinary. They had built a home not just on a ship but within each other's hearts forever. Morning light streamed through the Endeavor's Grace's viewport, painting the hydroponics bay in gold and lavender. Illyra hovered among the orchids, their petals unfurling at her delighted hum. Today was the day. Captain Mirek had secured a special audience with the Andrasian Adoption Coalition's High Council, final approval for Illyra's permanent guardianship. As they stepped onto the polished registry floor, the air thrummed with muted energy. Holographic banners proclaimed celebrating new bonds and home is where the heart is. Illyra's hand tightened on Mirek's sleeve. Even after all they'd shared, the weight of bureaucracy still made her heart flutter. Director Tivasha waited at the dais, her mandibles softly clicking in greeting. Beside her sat Gelian counselors, a panel of stern faces unaccustomed to hesitation. Yet when Illyra met their gaze, she no longer saw the wary caution of 6 returns past. Instead, there was curiosity and something very close to hope. Mirek stepped forward, clearing his throat as he presented the sealed petition. "Esteemed Council," he began, voice resonant, "Illyra is no longer an unknown anomaly but a member of our crew, a valued guardian of our ship's well-being, and most importantly, my daughter in all but paperwork." He paused to let the words land. Illyra found her voice and added softly but firmly, "I want to stay." A hushed ripple passed through the council chamber. Tivasha's compound eyes flicked over Illyra's upturned face, the very picture of confidence and belonging. Then, in a motion both swift and decisive, she tapped the glowing approval seal on her console. "By decree of the Andrasian Coalition High Council," Tivasha announced, "Illyra of the unnamed sector is hereby granted permanent guardianship under Captain Marek Mirek. This union is recognized across all member worlds and sectors. May your bond endure." The seal popped onto the petition with a soft chime, and the holographic banner shifted to read, "Adoption confirmed." Cheers drifted downward from the observation balconies. Engineers who had once skirted Illyra's stall now clapped her on the back. Botanist from the hydroponics bay offered her a radiant violet orchid, an emblem of resilience and renewal. Later, back in their shared quarters, Illyra laid the newly signed petition on her Terra glass terrarium. Its roots glowed beneath a dome of protective glass, an echo, she realized, of her own journey. Mirek draped an arm around her shoulders. "Home isn't a planet, Illyra. It's who you choose to belong to, and who chooses you in return." She leaned into him, her silver filaments pulsing with warmth. "Then I'm home," she whispered. Beyond the viewport, stars wheeled in silent arcs. Ahead lay uncharted sectors, distant nebulae waiting to be explored. But Illyra no longer feared the unknown, for she carried with her the greatest certainty of all, a forever home, bound not by contracts or cosmic law, but by the enduring promise of family, 2 souls, human and alien, found at last among the stars.